It's
Welcome to the Bear Cave. The Chicago Bears drop to 4-9 after losing to the San Francisco 49ers 38-13. I don't know. Where do you want to start, Dobbs? I mean, I think what was very apparent in this game is I understand that it is a big jump from passing game coordinator to offensive coordinator to interim head coach in a span of 2 weeks. I get that. And I don't even want to blame Thomas Brown. But this game alone, outside of the Seahawks game, is probably the easiest game on the schedule for the rest of the year. And if you wanted to have any shot at filling this head coaching vacancy at the end of the year, you had to win this game. They came out flat like the rest of the year. The defense looked horrible. I thought we would be seeing they did blitz a little, but Brandon Ayuk is out. Debo Samuel is more worried most of the time about his next meal than his next catch. They're on their third or fourth running back. Why are we playing zone defense? Why is Jalen Johnson getting cooked? It's just one of these things where it's like, and this is what the game really made me realize, Dobbs. And then I'll let you go to kind of instant thoughts, and then we can kind of go into kind of the issue with the team. Okay, we knew the coach was a problem. I've been starting to have issues with these players talking about, oh yeah, the coaches. You also have a player issue. You have a GM issue, and you have a talent evaluation issue. Because me, rest of the Bears fans, Ryan Poles, they have all overestimated the talent that they're putting on the field. Yes, do I think you could get a lot out of this group with the right coaches? Yes, but DJ Moore is a leader. Cole Kmet is a leader. Jalen Johnson is a leader. Why are there so many leaders on this team that haven't won shit? They haven't won a single thing. Please show me what they've won and why they should be leaders. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have leaders on a team. That's not the point. The point is this is a player-led team. What has the players on this team won outside of Keenan Allen and Mercedes Lewis?
I gotta interrupt you real quick, Hunter. See, and this is the problem. There's so many problems. What the fuck am I talking about? This is far from the main problem, which actually is what's so disheartening about the situation. But let me interrupt real quick. Is DJ Moore a leader? Is DJ Moore the type of guy you would say that you would want leading you? I'll throw it out there.
I don't know. Not with the way he was acting earlier this year.
And look, there's so much we got to get into today, Hunter. I don't even, and Bears fans are on the same page at this point, right, guys? I mean, it's like, where do we even start?
You'd hope.
How about let's start with this, because this was the first thing I was talking about today, and it's far from the biggest issue. I think let's start small and let's progress. Okay, Bears just gave a boatload of money to Jalen Johnson, and he's basically pulling
a boatload of money to Cole Kmet as well,
and he's
DJ Moore as well.
Like I was saying earlier, Hunter, he's pulling a Marshawn Lattimore 2.0. Like, and here's my thing, and I want to be clear about this because this is where people get confused too. When I say that, Marshawn never turned into a bad corner, and Jalen Johnson still is not a bad corner. But what happened with both of them was that they were like top 3 to 5 corners throughout their rookie contract, and then they got that absolute bag where they became a top 5 paid player at the position, and all of a sudden they're like their 30th or 25th best at the position at the snap of a finger. And I know a lot of Bears fans are going to disagree with that. They're going to be like, what do you look again? Jalen Johnson has been back to even recently, he had a good week against Justin Jefferson. There was 3 snaps where he wasn't double covering on Justin Jefferson. On those 3 snaps, allowed 2 receptions, average of 11 yards per reception. So again, back to he has a lot of help right now where whenever he's locking someone up, we're saying locking someone up, it's not like how it was last year. It's usually a doubled scenario where you're doubling whatever the X receiver a lot of the times. But I'm not even going to get into the deep analytics right now because we have so much to talk about. The bottom line of what I'm trying to say is, unfortunately, since Jalen Johnson got paid, it's been a I don't know. I want to say a steep regression this year because it's not like he's all of a sudden bottom 50%. But man, oh man, this is not what the Bears paid him for this year. And to his credit, look,
I think a big thing is they're not getting home with the defensive line either. And with the conservative defense that they've been running, they're forced to sit in coverage more. Now, do I think all the defense or the secondary is playing great? No, I don't. I mean, I think honestly they lost a lot of heart when Billings and Brisker went down, unfortunately. But if you want to be one of those top guys, you got to perform every week. And I just haven't seen that out of Jalen Johnson. He's been one of the most vocal guys. If you're going to be one of the most vocal guys about a coach getting fired, you need to play like that guy every single Sunday. And he just hasn't. I mean, not to say he's not a very good corner in the league. He is, but
he's not the best.
You're advocating for coaches to get fired. Like, you can talk about, well, I said this or that, and walk your way around it. But we all know what you were saying. We all know what these players were saying. You have a coach issue, you have a player issue, you have a GM issue, you have an evaluation issue. Now, this all starts at the top, obviously. Now, Dobbs, before we get into anything else, I think we need to address kind of there's no more scapegoats, right? Like, there's no more.
Well, actually, matter of fact, I was gonna say it's actually there kind of is one, but he kind of got to hide behind the front lines for a while. He kind of got to sit back, and we would attack everyone else. It's almost the theme of the day here, I would say, Hunter. What we're gonna really get into the meat and potatoes of the show here, because there is one man that's gonna be taking a lot of responsibility today. Where again, it was kind of a discussion we were having on the show throughout the week, but today's really the day that it's really hit fruition, where we really need to talk about a lot of the things this man I'm referring to has done. And that's the theme of the show today, Bears fans.
So I think we need to talk about Ryan Poles. Okay.
Oh, we need to.
Ryan Poles signed Edmonds, who looked lost. Gave Edmonds a bag. Was
looking
lost.
Yes, he looks.
Lost.
Oh, it's
the burnt toast meme? He was burnt toast. That's who Terrell Edmonds or Tremaine Edmonds. Sorry, they worked out his brother a while ago, but when they were looking for safeties, but looked like burnt toast, looked like Eli Apple in crucial games.
Linebacker edition.
Lit the second, the last pick of the first round on fire when they traded for Chase Claypool. DeAndre Swift has been a very, 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 very underwhelming signing, and we knew that he was a O-line merchant in Philadelphia, right?
Can I tell you what the irony of this situation is? Not to interrupt, Hunter. Because I want, before we move on to the next point, because this is something I really have to harp on, and because we've talked about this for years now. This is what the irony of the situation is, specifically with the DeAndre Swift thing. Ryan Poles, ex-O lineman. We talk all the time about how the Bears will never evolve as a franchise until they start prioritizing the O-line early or heavily through free agency, like elite franchises always do. You guys know me, my trenches by now. The trenches. And the ironic part is that he watched DeAndre Swift eat behind what you could argue was the best O-line in the entire league. He didn't, Hunter, it's crazy. He didn't think to himself, wait a minute. It doesn't really matter who you put behind the O-line, as long as the O-line is really good. You would figure as a former O-lineman, that would be the first thing in his head. But for whatever reason, he said, let's give premier money to a position group that is I don't want to say at its lowest point historically, but at a time where it's been proven that you don't need to spend high capital on them. That's the best way I could say it.
To build on top of that, Dobbs, like, I was getting into the fact of, okay, we know Swift succeeds in open space and behind a good O-line. He doesn't succeed very well when he's getting hit. And his yards after contact, I believe, is one of the lowest in the league. Now, on top of that, Roschon Johnson, who you drafted last year, was out with a concussion. He was out with a concussion the year prior. You traded Khalil Herbert, a more than capable running back, to the Bengals for a 7th-round pick because your offensive coordinator and Shane Waldron couldn't figure out how to use him. Go figure, the guy that's fired. You could have had a crucial piece of this offense to allow to take the pressure off your rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams. And I'm not saying that Khalil Herbert is the same level of player as Greg Olsen, but it's like when I believe it was Mike Martz was like, oh yeah, Greg Olsen's not fitting in my offense. Greg Olsen's not fitting in your offense. Khalil Herbert's not fitting in your offense. Maybe figure out the offense a little bit better. Then you have the Ryan Bates trade where he's barely been able to stay on the field. You have the Amagaji pick, a tackle from Yale in the 3rd round who's been injured. You have Zach Pickens, who has looked like a horrible pick, who was taken in the 2nd round to pair up with Javon Dexter, who has looked nice, but not that crazy, next level player that you want him to be. And he still has time to develop, right? He's still a young guy. Failing to address the O-line over and over and over and over again on the interior is bad. Retaining Flus and then hiring Shane Waldron. these small issues that have come from Ryan Poles, he fails to nip them in the bud, and they have blossomed into massive problems. And this is something that we all know, right? Poles talked about, I love this depth on this offensive line. Well, how can I forget? The Nate Davis signing. How can I forget? He's not even on the team anymore. The Velus Jones draft pick. I knew I was missing some stuff. It's just, the point is, you have Matt Pryor, who isn't the worst thing in the world playing right guard, but you were paying Nate Davis $10 million a year to play that. You drafted Velus Jones in the 3rd round. It's just all these things that have added up over time have really started to hurt him. And I think that's how you have to evaluate the GM position. You can't look at it like, oh, he had a great draft, they played well this year. You have to look at how this stuff plays out over a span of years. And so far, Ryan Poles has said we're going to take the North and never give it back. We've taken the bottom of the North and never given it back. He has never been at the bottom, never been not at the bottom. So it's just one of those things, Dobbs, where the message is getting really, 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 really old. And when you watch that press conference with Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles, neutered. Ryan Poles looked like he was neutered up there. They're talking about Ryan Poles as the final say. Ryan Poles, he's going to be the lead man in this search. Then why did Kevin Warren talk for 80% of the press conference? My thing is, at this point, if Ben Johnson walks into your office and says, I will coach here, but I need a new GM, you give Ryan Poles the boot, no doubt. No doubt. Because I'm going to tell you what, he didn't galaxy brain the Carolina trade. If Carolina threw that trade at anybody in the league, they would have taken that. Number 1 overall quarterback, Caleb Williams. Nobody else is taking not Caleb Williams. Number 9, Romo Dunze. You could take a lineman there. Yeah, I'll buy it, right? Romo Dunze is a great player, but he's not galaxy braining these picks. Like, the only picks that have outperformed vastly is probably Braxton Jones. Like, there's been some good additions from his picks, but like Brisker's a safety. Kyler Gordon's like a slot corner. You're taking these guys in the 2nd round. They better hit. So it's just like Poles has made the obvious move, but it's like, has he really is he providing us an advantage? Like, that's the main thing we talked about with Flus.
And look, Hunter, this goes back to, me in my trenches. I can't stop talking about him. But look, jokes aside, like you're saying, those picks, the high premium pick, because to me, look, I'm going to say it like this. 2nd and 3rd round picks are premium picks. So I get so mad when I see people talking about they traded him for just a 3rd round pick. Like, yeah, if you're a GM who knows that he had to use a 3rd round pick, you're picking who you believe is going to be a productive starter for you for the next at least 4 years. So, and that's why you use those picks on O linemen and D linemen. And to your point about the slot corners, the safeties, that's where you sprinkle in money in free agency. Like, call me crazy, Hunter. I mean, I see all my not favorite, but my favorite GMs who I think are great team builders. I think it's pretty similar through the course of history, right? Like, the best team builders understand that you spend premium capital on the guys that are going to cost you a ton in free agency. You have a chance to keep them in house, but before they hit free agency, and it's a good recipe, right? And then you spend the money. You sprinkle it on the positions where you don't want to spend the high draft capital, because if you don't spend that draft capital on the premium positions, you're going to be spending premium money in free agency. It's kind of like a chemistry recipe. You get what I'm saying here? So the reality of the situation is, and this has been a thing for we're going on far over a decade plus at this point. The Bears don't, and this goes past. This is multiple regimes. This is not just Poles, but now we're forced to talk about Poles because we have another option. I mean, we're not going back in time. The Bears consistently fail to address the 2 most important position groups in a consistent basis. And we sit back and wonder, right? Bears fans are sitting back and wondering, how in the world could this happen? How can we have so many guys that we're supposed to make an impact and they don't? Because if the core of the team, which will always be the O-line and will always be the D-line, it will never change. Some people, they let these fun offenses fool them for a year or two, and then reality always sets in again, Hunter. Defenses will always adjust. Offenses will always get adjusted to. And yes, there will be periods of time where offense looks explosive, like no defense can handle it. It'll come back to reality. Offensive lines and defensive lines will always be the forefront, the fundamentals of winning championship football. And the Bears just haven't figured it out. Until that becomes the bottom line, that trenches are essential with the first 3 rounds, basically every single year, nothing will change. And I'm not saying there can't be exceptions. Sometimes if you have a flyer, or not a flyer, but let's say an extra pick in a round, or a guy who fell much further than you projected, and you're like, okay, you know what? That will be a productive starter. I don't mind spending a non-premium position on a pick to tie. There's situations that I understand it, but consistently not addressing it year after year, it just can't be a thing. And that's where we're at nowadays. And it's where we've been for a long time.
I think my thing is, like, after this game, I just want Caleb Williams to look good, but I mean, I'm not one of those fans where it's like you have to cheer for them to win. Like, why are you being a fan? Like, if you want the long-term success of the franchise, you need them to lose every single game the rest of the year. You do. And I saw a couple Bears tweets, interactions on Twitter where they were talking about, oh, I wouldn't be opposed to the Bears taking Ashton Jeanty. I love Ashton Jeanty. I would love him on the Bears. Unfortunately, because of the failure to build up the trenches for the Chicago Bears, Ashton Jeanty should not even be in your vocabulary. It should not be a name in your head. Men in Black, thumb, pen to your face, gone. That name is gone. If you are picking in the top 10, Ashton Jeanty is not your pick if you're the Chicago Bears. You take the best O-lineman, and if you don't see the value there, you take the best edge rusher or interior rusher. If Mason Graham's there, like if Abdul Carter is there, maybe look at them. You cannot afford to take another skill position in the top 10 when you have a franchise quarterback who has an interior O-line that looks like shit. And now, I mean, like, I'm fine if you roll it back with Braxton Jones, but I'm okay if you don't. Like, this team got more talented over the offseason, and somehow they're worse. They're worse. They are worse.
Yeah, Hunter, I have to address. I was going to say, no, I have to address it before we move on from it, just because. I want you to keep going, but because if I don't say it now, I'm going to forget. To the Jeanty thing, this is where Bears fans as a whole have got to get on the same page, because this is what kills me. Again, because Hunter, again, from the outside looking in, I tell people I saw decade plus of success the same way, and the recipe was no All-Pro skill position guys, no Pro Bowl skill position guys. You know who was the Pro Bowlers and the All-Pros? The guys in the trenches. And here's the thing too. There's so many things. The fact that, because I've seen a lot of it too, Hunter, and I have friends that say it too, that Jeanty to the Bears somehow is going to erase the 30 other problems that we talk about. Like, it really hits a point where you have to ask yourself, have you, like Bears fans, have the Bears made you lose the plot as a whole? Because again, it doesn't matter how talented somebody is. It really doesn't. And I'll even look, I could go throughout the course of history and name so many Hall of Fame, the greatest running backs in history. And 9 out of 10 of these guys, 8 out of 10 of these guys never won a Super Bowl because their team didn't address any of the important stuff. You can have an amazing running back. If you don't have everything else figured out, it's not doing anything for your team. Honestly, the fact that it's even a discussion for a lot of Bears fans right now is truly mind-boggling, Hunter. And we'll move on past it. I just need to say, like, Bears fans, we got to regather the plot here. It's time to stop thinking that all of a sudden you add a guy like Ashton Jeanty and it's going to look like 2019 LSU. It's not how football works. Okay. 2019 LSU had an amazing O-line and an amazing D-line. Go figure. So again, back to what you were saying, Hunter. I just have to say that before it slipped my mind, because the fact that it's even in discussion, it's like the Bears have truly made it. The Bears, a lot of Bears fans at this point, they haven't addressed it for so long that I think a lot of Bears fans have forgotten how quintessential it is to winning football games. You can't just throw guys out there that are talented and expect, with no time for running plays to develop, no way to attack the edge of a defense, and no way to protect your quarterback, that all of a sudden a good game plan is going to come together. It's not how football works at any level.
This definitely sealed, like, there can't be any consideration for Thomas Brown to be the head coach anymore. And
I was this much to begin with, but
I want to say this though. No, I mean, I agree. I think people were hyping it up a little bit, like one of those galaxy brain things where it's just like, Just don't do it. Don't be the team that hires the interim. Like, don't do it. Caleb Williams is not free of fault. Obviously, I don't think Caleb Williams is the problem. But 7 sacks today, not good. Didn't use his legs like he has been the last couple weeks until later in the game. Couple turnover-worthy plays. I mean, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. Like, I'm okay if he makes mistakes. Like, that fumble was tough. It happens to quarterbacks. Like, I don't know with this team at this point. Like, I just feel like you have to not blow it up, but you cannot go into next year thinking that this team is a piece away. Like, if this team went 10-7, then okay, maybe we can talk about, oh, they're a couple pieces away. That is not the case at all. The trenches are not good. Tremaine Edmonds looks horrible. Horrible. I don't know, Dobbs. I think my biggest takeaway from this is like the Bears are actually at square one. Like, they should. You can't fire Poles after taking Rome and Caleb, but it would have been the perfect opportunity for Kevin Warren to get new GM, new head coach. And hindsight is 2020 because no one was calling for Ryan Poles' job after we took Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze. But they fucked it up again with the caveat that they may have finally got the quarterback.
But Hunter, and this goes back to, again, it's so funny how you can always go back to the same thing. And I'll use so many. Look, we will use multiple examples over the course of history. This is the thing about it where everyone needs to realize too. And to your point, look, Hunter, I'm not saying I'm worried about it, because my thing is that the reality is that Caleb will eventually become the player he's supposed to be. I do think it's going to be delayed much further than it was supposed to be at this point because of the way that the Bears have handled it. But again, to kind of throw in a comparison, and I know, again, they're not the same. Caleb was a much higher touted prospect, but for kind of comparison's sake, when Mahomes went and was able to start that year after, right, for the first year, you go figure that he went into a situation where they already had a fully established, really good O-line group. And there's just so many situations like that. The course of history, Brock Purdy going into a situation with a really good, and I know it's not the same right now anymore, but you go right, first in going into situations with a really good O-line unit. All these, it's just you go figure, Hunter, that when a quarterback steps in and they're able to have success when they're really young, when they're still forming habits, is when you have confidence that you're not going to. And that's kind of back to the thing we talked about this before, where Caleb has already gone through a really bad like set of habits that he's had to develop because of what he's shell shocked. Like, he went from being, again, and it's also a thing where inherently in college he was much more athletic than a lot of the people chasing him down and stuff. So some of the bad habits it was able to let slide, right? But the thing about it is, because we talked about it too, how he didn't have even a good O-line in college. But it's much different when you're playing in a college conference that's not the SEC. Even if it was the SEC, it's still a whole different world when you make it to the NFL. So, it's kind of like the whole thing where they didn't set him up to have the right habits. They gave him an offensive coordinator and a head coach that took all of the killer instinct out of him. It's been he honestly, they took the killer instinct out of him. And that's my biggest thing that really worries me, is that I saw so much stuff at USC where you'd be like, and again, that's what we talked about even during the scouting process last year. Like, look, he's far from being like the perfect prospect, because the reality is he does have some things that you worry about maybe being mistakes where you're like, okay, he's prone to making mistakes here and there. But the upside of what he would do, it's kind of like Josh Allen. I would even say, it's kind of like what Josh Allen does, where, yeah, like he's prone to making a really ugly mistake here and there. So he's not perfect inherently, but you'd much rather have the upside of what comes with that than the version of him where he just shuts down all the killer instinct just to not make mistakes. And that's basically what they've turned Caleb into within 1 year, which is why I've said multiple times, this offensive coordinator and this head coach is basically going to make or break the next 2 or 3 years at least for the Bears. Because to your point, the scheme that's in place is going to determine how well they can run the ball. How well they run the ball is going to be how much time Caleb has to throw. Because if they run the ball how it's been this year again, teams are just going to tee off on you in its passing situations, as they know he can, because they know you have no chance to try to do something, a chunk on a draw, on a screen, something along those lines, which the Bears don't do. So again, I sound like I'm rambling, but it's just because Hunter, there's so many problems with the way that they've lacked the trenches. The not addressing the trenches has led to bad habits, has led to him losing the killer instinct, has led to him being already not a different player because I know he still has that in him, but now it has to be recoached into him. And that to me is the last thing you want when you took a killer with your first overall pick, which is what he was coming out.
Okay, Dobbs, I'm going to read to you the top Bears under contract in 2026 and let me know if you're going to cut them. Well, the guys that should be cut. Tremaine Edmonds, after 2025, has a dead cap of 2 million, basically 2.5 million. To me, he's cut.
It's not even close. No, it's not. It's like at this point, it's not even like negotiable. It's like no, like done. Because again, too, money's so much cheaper, or you can spend a late round pick like teams will do. But those are your fifth, sixth, and seventh picks, right? You can get those guys in the later rounds. You don't have to draft early linebackers. No. So back to the not premium positions kind of thing, right? Already off the bat. So,
DeAndre Swift as well. I think it's like 1.3 million. I guess my thing is when you look at like outside of extensions, right? Like after 2025, because the Bears only have 21 players under contract for 2026. If you cut those guys, you're going to have about 160 million in cap. So the idea is if you bring in a GM, right, or you bring in a new head coach that are going to be coaching in 2025, you're still going to have 70, 80 mil. And then when you get into 2026, you're going to have a lot of money. Like outside of like players you bring in through free agency and everything like that, you're going to have a lot of money. Like it's tough because the appealing part of the Bears is they do have valuable pieces. But does the front office get it right? Because I know Poles is probably going to be back next year. But I just have a really hard time stomaching him losing these next 4 games, Thomas Brown losing these next 4 games, and Poles being back and being able to hire the coach. Like I don't get that.
Well, but Hunter, here's the thing, and I think I think we're on the same page about this. This is where it becomes so problematic because I'm trying to think of a good analogy for it. But the Bears are, I'll say it without, I don't have time to think of a good analogy. The Bears, kind of to an extent, the way that the team is structured is kind of an illusion. And what I mean by that is like, okay, right? It's kind of like how I'll give you what I'm thinking right now. It's kind of like already like what we're seeing with the whole Flus thing. It took literally 1 week for us to go right because we already knew Flus was the problem. But then you go, wait, Flus was the problem, but the team building is arguably a bigger problem. So then it's like, wait, was it Poles? But then, like we go back to the press conference, we're like, okay, but is Poles even the one who really calls the shots, or is Kevin Warren the one that calls the shots? And then it's like, wait, is it Poles? Is it Kevin Warren? And then you would go, wait, but is it the fact that the ownership too has absolutely zero idea what they're doing whenever they're interviewing anybody?
No.
And it's like, so it's like, you get what I'm saying here, Hunter? It's an illusion because we really don't even know who's to blame. Like we can sit here and go, Poles. And then, because we said it's best and worst case scenario. Best case scenario, okay, well, someone comes in and changes everything. But then we bring in someone new, and behind the scenes, Kevin Warren still has more say. Nothing changes. And then we go, oh, Kevin Warren's got to go. And then we're trusting the Bears front office, just notoriously terrible decision makers, to replace again. And Hunter, how long has the cycle been going on? I guess that's kind of the thing where, and every Bears fan's on the same page at this point. That's why I think everyone is so discouraged, is because it's like, it's all, to your point, if we gave a different front office this same roster, I genuinely believe the results would look drastically different. That's where it's like, that's what's so troubling about the situation, is that it's like, to your point, the Bears haven't, right? We talked about that. They haven't drafted terribly. They haven't, the money has not been spent very well, but this team is not as bad. It should not be as bad as the record is, but some way, somehow, year after year, they keep finding a way to either keep the wrong people in the building or to bring in the next wrong person.
How do you how do you come out flat literally every single week? How do you come out flat every single week? How do you do that so consistently?
Well,
I
Terrence,
know.
with this team, to the back to Hunter, they can never establish a run game. So people start teeing off on Caleb back to how he's losing all the good habits he had. It's a threefold thing that we're witnessing every single week. I mean, I know what you're saying. How does it happen? But specifically this year, that's how it happens. They don't do the fundamental thing you have to do to establish defenses to balance, and you have a rookie quarterback who's losing confidence every single week of this happening. And again, to look, man, to Caleb Williams' credit, and we still see the flashes. We still see what he can be, what I always will believe that he will be. But again, we're delaying the development so much that it is just so incredibly discouraging.
I guess I'll just say this, okay? Okay, so this is what I was coming to say. So right now, Ryan Poles is 14-33 as a GM. If they go 0-4, he will be 14-37.
He's on the Joe Douglas path.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
good drafts, good all, but then the results.
Like, you wanna. It's just them keeping Eberflus is what this is. That's the small problem that blossomed, right? When you didn't break the alignment of the coach and the quarterback, the rookie quarterback, that is when the problem started. I mean, obviously, it's more in the roots, but at face value, when you decide to keep Eberflus, when you knew he was on the hot seat, please tell me coaches that have been on the hot seat and saved their jobs and it has become a success story. It doesn't happen. And the reality is, this all goes back to, and Dobbs, you pointed out to me early, the smugness and arrogance of Ryan Poles.
Glad you brought it back up.
The smartest person in the room. Darnell Wright, good player. But you said, basically, the organization isn't in a place to have a player like Jalen Carter. You mean the same Jalen Carter who is double teamed every single play and still wreaking havoc? The organization isn't ready for that player. Well, then you have problems with your organization. And the issue is, okay, you get O-line. But Jalen Carter was a blue chip player. Blue chip player. And guess what? You passed on him. Guess what? You used that extra fourth you got? A specialist. A punter. I like Tory Taylor. I do. I think he's a good player. I like him for the Bears. We could have used a pick on something else. Kieran Amagashi, injured tackle from Yale.
Well, I want to point this out, 200 about your point about the punter. Like, yeah, he's a good punter. Name me one dynasty where they're successful a lot on their punter. The Chiefs just got rid of their 2-time Super Bowl winning punter, and they said,
"You want to know what it was?"
Patriots. Name me the Patriots dynasty punter. You see what I'm saying here?
Flus.
And Hunter,
he wanted his quarterbacks to be 200.
I got
touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 200 yards. Like, it's just like, oh yeah, we need a guy that can flip the field, so my defense can just hold. It's pathetic. This franchise is pathetic.
No, let me leave it at this, 200, because this is look, I don't mean to victory lap, because the good news is at least Darnell Wright does look very promising. That is where there's a bright side to it. But you remember, Jalen Carter was my number 2 overall prospect in that draft. I said, dude, you remember that scouting?
Falling to 9 would have been Hunter, a blessing for
actually, Teddy who doesn't know, we were at that draft live, and we were literally so shocked when they announced the pick.
We were in Kansas City.
It was like every Bears fan in the area was like, what? Like it's like if you were a kid and you like really thought your parent got you a specific Christmas gift that you were like really looking forward to, and then you opened it and you kind of have to pretend you're like still really excited, but you're like, oh man, that wasn't the one I really wanted. That was basically like what it was like being around every Bears fan in that situation. And I was sitting there as the same boat as you guys. I'm like, what? Because again, and this is Hunter, we've talked about this before. I talk about it all the time. And this is where it's a coping thing to me. You want to talk about the word, people to use the word cope. The primest cope is when people will say some dumb shit, part of my language, but like where people will say, oh, but he wouldn't have been a good fit on our franchise because X and X and X. Dude, I'm going to say something that not a lot of other people want to say for some reason, but everybody who really knows ball would agree with this and knows this. Look, man, these guys are football players. Like, if you think that 9 out of 10, a lot of these guys are going to be the most, oh, he's just such a gentle soul. He's just such a, he's such a just straight, calm guy. As if everyone's what Jalen Carter to be. His job is to literally take on multiple grown men that are 300 plus pounds and dominate them at a forcible point of contact. You want this dude to not have maybe a screw loose? You get what I'm saying here? Like, everyone's like, oh, but he's not going to fit on the team. Motherfucker, he is a defensive lineman on a professional football team. His job is not to be the nicest guy in the room. So it really grinded my gears when everyone was like, well, he wouldn't fit on this team. No, Jalen Carter would have fit on any team. His job is to wreck the game. He would have wrecked the game on whatever team drafted him. And if you want to cope and say, oh, no, the Eagles were just a great spot for it. You think that to put it in and make a joke out of it too, but it's funny. Nick Sirianni, of all people, was the guy that got Jalen Carter right. Nick Sirianni can't even get in the press conference without, rolling in on a skateboard and saying, yeah, Chiefs fans. You think Nick Sirianni's the one that fixed Jalen Carter or some shit? Get with the program, gang. Jalen Carter would have gone crazy no matter who fucking drafted him. So the fact that so many Bears fans have the nerve to look me in the eye still and be like, dude, no, it was an Eagles thing. It was a situational thing. No, that's what happens when you draft elite players, when you're in position to draft them, Hunter.
I agree. And I think my thing too, Dobbs, I was kind of thinking about this as I was watching the game. And what was some of the conversations that we had previously in the year about Eberflus? Like, he's a good coach for when your team is bad because he can get the guys who are playing for roster spots on all 32 teams to play hard. Like, he knows how to get those guys to play hard. But when he gets the guys who are a little bit more established in the league, know what they got going on, know who they are as a player, know that they'll make the roster, he's not going to get those guys going. And especially when they start losing.
Hunter, he has a trick up his sleeve. What do you mean?
It's going to pop. But my point is, Eberflus is a great coach to get your rebuild started. But the whole Bears fan base knew that once last year was over, it was time for an upgrade, right? Everybody knew that Flus was not going to be the guy to lead us to a Super Bowl.
Except for Poles and Kevin Warren and the McCaskies.
So I was thinking about this. Poles the same guy. He's good to get the end of the roster players there and maybe non-premium positions. He can find some value here and there. Billings was a great signing. But I don't know if he's that guy to get you over the hump. I don't think he is. And it's just like, Thomas Brown came out and said, we're going to play a violent game of football. Football is a violent game. He didn't say we're going to play violent, but he's like, football's a violent game. We need to play.
They didn't play violent.
That was not violent.
Spoiler alert.
And we talk about Poles being an offensive lineman. Well, guess what? Poles sucked at offensive line. That's why he didn't play very long. So maybe he has sympathy for players he thinks should be better but aren't. He said in Hard Knocks, it's going to be hard to make this roster. Why? Why is it going to be hard to make this roster? Because you kept shitty players? You signed Gerald Everett? Like,
oh man, I forgot about that one.
Oh, it's bad. It's bad. And I understand he's been critical of himself according to Sears Tower and whatever. This GM, it's just, here's my thing. Here's what's going to happen. They hire the wrong guy. It's very evident he's the wrong guy because Poles obviously cannot look at coaching talent. Everyone knows Poles is on the hot seat with this coach. Coach, you might not get the top candidates because they know how the season's panned out with Poles. You don't get the best guy because of that. Then we're in the same cycle where Caleb's on his third head coach and it's a new GM and you got to re-sign him. And it's like, the cycle has already begun. It has already begun. I don't. Let's just take a look at the stats real quick and let's discuss this while we kind of close it out.
My God,
Rome and Caleb look good. Like that throw to Rome in the corner was great. Caleb can rip it over the field. That's great. Rome had 4 catches for 42 yards, 2 touchdowns. DJ Moore, 6 catches, 49 yards. Keenan Allen, 3 catches, 30 yards. Could have used Khalil Herbert, but Travis Homer played instead. It's just like, I'm just so over this team at this point, Dobbs, and I've been over them since the Washington game because I knew what the season was as soon as that game ended. And I'm tired of looking at Tankathon every day after Thanksgiving. I've been doing that for a long time now.
No, I've been doing it for a short period of time in my life, and it's already gotten depressing. That's why I'm saying, like, you know how it is. I want to see the Bears succeed so bad because number one, again, just being in the area. When the area's teams,
It's
awesome. The morale's higher. Everyone's doing better. Everyone's more prosperous. But look, stuff outside of the team aside, there's just. And I'm going to say that it's such a side note, but I really need to point out because it's another thing that just points to me every single time. The Bears are so incompetent with it. Like, and this was a thing last year too. They literally never run the ball when Travis Homer's on the field. They literally tell the defense, send a blitz, or they say just literally do whatever you want. You know it's a passing situation. The Bears are like the only team in the league where they can align a certain way, and you're like, yeah, no, that's exactly what. There's literally zero doubt that they're going to not run the ball on this play. Like, the Bears are dysfunctional on more levels than just they're dysfunctional in more than just the front office. It's a catastrophe. And to kind of close out here, this is to me what I hate the most about this year. Because it kills me. Because again, he's been my guy. He's been my guy for going on 3-4 years now. 4 years realistically, because we knew real ones knew he was the truth even after the first year of his college career, before he even went to USC. But the thing about it is now I'm starting to see again the narratives pile up around Caleb, and I hate it because it is not his fault. And what makes me even more upset because it makes me realize again that most football fans don't understand that it's just like it's like a big cycle of insanity. Everyone thinks good football teams just grow like out of the ground with no roots. The roots are the trenches. Caleb has no trench help. Like, does no one understand what's going on here? Like, I'm like, dude, you can sit here and blame Caleb all you want. Yes, he is far from perfect. And again, he's developing bad habits. First one to admit it, hand up. But is that his fault? No. This goes back to what Kevin O'Connell was just saying a few months ago. Way more organizations fail their quarterbacks than the quarterbacks fail the organizations. Do I think that the Bears are going to fail Caleb Williams? No, because I genuinely believe he's actually talented enough. He will transcend the insanity that is the Chicago Bears over the circa the last 20 years. But the bottom line is this, Hunter, and this is the facts, and this is kind of what makes it so crucial, is that nobody is, especially Caleb and his family, there's no one that can force Caleb at the end of this rookie contract
to resign
to the paper. And that's the thing that I think everybody really needs to start to get with is because the best case scenario for Caleb is that he will keep because he is that good. I don't care that what the casual fan is saying right now. He will keep getting better every year, and we will see improvements no matter how dysfunctional the situation is. But come at the end of those 5 years, there will be nobody that can force him to put the pen to the paper for the Chicago Bears at Hallis Hall. The Bears have to force their hand on that subject. So if they don't get everything right, Hunter, over the next 3 or 4 years, we will look back on this period of time as the time where the Bears had the literal greatest prospect over the last 15-year period and found a way to not make it work. And that is unstomachable, even from the outside looking in. And I'll mic drop on that one.
It's embarrassing, dude. Like, it's just one of those things where you're watching the game today. They start slow. The 49ers, do you remember the play when it was like a read option where Purdy could have handed off to Garendo or he could have kept it and ran?
Right.
Garendo and Purdy both scored. It didn't matter. They both scored. If he handed the ball off, if he ran it in himself, they both scored. The defensive coordinator played like shit. The offensive coordinator wasn't dialing it up until the end of the game, and it still wasn't good. And offensive coordinator and interim head coach Thomas Brown. the run pass balance in
Who,
the
by the way, has
first
had
half.
2 promotions in the last 2-3 weeks.
Okay, so I
Dysfunction.
understand. Okay, this is a good thing to kind of end it on. I understand the idea that this guy might get head coaching interviews, right? Okay, so let me get this straight, right? He had head coaching interviews last year. He had only called plays in Carolina. He's gone through multiple years of coaching interviews and yet has not called plays a whole season. He hasn't got an offensive coordinator position where he's been calling plays, but somehow he's a head coach. So I just want to understand, right? People were worried about hiring Thomas Brown, which I, as a Bears fan, understand. I understand how the McCaskies operate. I understand how the Bears organization operates. It would be a scary thing if we hire this guy. But can we really think about it like, what has this guy proven in the NFL? That the guys like him? You know who the guys liked? They liked Flus last year when they were winning. All this new energy talk, all this, it feels better.
I can remember someone else they liked first too.
Shit.
You remember the guy before him that they liked for a while?
Nagy?
Before it all went to shit? Yeah.
See,
I remember a time when
Nagy
they loved
actually
him
took
too.
him to the playoffs. Nagy took him to the
I
playoffs.
love Nagy too. I remember a time where everyone loved Nagy for a year. I remember like it was yesterday, Hunter. So again, but it goes back to it's almost like it doesn't matter. Oh, it's almost like it doesn't matter who's in the building because the people at the top of the building are so abhorrent at their jobs because all that they care about is money. It's almost like that's the barren reality that the Chicago Bears are dealing with. It's almost like wins come second to the fact that the fans will show up no matter what. They will buy the new draft prospects jersey no matter what. And I will keep saying it, especially to close out the year. Bears fans, let me tell you one thing. If you're going to take away one thing from this video and one thing only, sell the tickets, hire a fucking plane to go over the stadium like that just happened today at the Saints-Giants game. Did you see that, by the way, Hunter? Yeah, someone hired a plane, like one of those planes with like the banners on the back, and it said like,
I saw
John Mara. I don't remember
exactly,
but
I didn't know what it said.
It basically said something. I don't remember the exact quote, but it said like, Mara, this has to stop. Like this dumpster fire needs reevaluating. Like something like dumpster fire was in the words. It was just saying like, can everything. Like we got to start fresh. The Bears need to not only have a plane, but it's the more important part. Fuck the plane. Stop buying stuff because that's actually, and this is the truth, Hunter. It took us a long time. But we came to the realization that no matter what, it's like the problem is that winning comes second to the fact that this team is always going to be one of the highest selling teams in terms of ticket sales, in terms of merchandise. Bears fans, stop. The message has got to be sent that it is no longer fun just to go to the tailgate and watch shit. It is not. It's over. Would you agree, Hunter? It's time. It's insanity. It has to stop.
It's never going to stop. It's the Bears. Patrick Manley tweeted, "Thank God Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason, Brandon Ayuk, and Aaron Banks aren't playing for the 49ers. That would have been ugly." That's another thing we have to consider, Dobbs, like on top of like how it's like a never-ending clusterfuck with the Bears is we were talking about but this is what the point I was trying to make with Thomas Brown earlier that I forgot that I'll loop back on. Why are you rolling with this guy as your interim head coach? I understand you want to give him an audition if you thought he was a realistic option. The most important, what is the likelihood of him being your head coach next year? What realistically, Dobbs, before this game, what was the likelihood of Thomas Brown being the head coach next year?
I would say 1.7.
Less than 10%.
Right. Oh, far less. And this is another thing I want to ask you, too, Hunter. When have you ever seen an interim coach that didn't have one of the coordinator positions when the year started.
No, that's crazy. It's crazy.
Only the Bears would end up in a situation.
Let me ask you this.
They fire the heck.
What was the percentage of Caleb Williams being your quarterback next year?
Wait, what do you mean? You're saying like
what? No, just answer. What is the percentage that Caleb Williams is your starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears next year?
Wow, 100%.
So why would you move the guy who has been working on Caleb and doing it successfully to a different position?
Hold on,
You deserved fire Eberflus. Eberflus sucked. I mean, the thing is, Eberflus still would have gotten fired. Shane Waldron still would have been the OC. All this stuff would have still went down, and we wouldn't have had a quarterback going into next year if they didn't draft Caleb. So it's like, just ridiculous.
No, I mean, genuinely, it's like, I don't even like, I don't. It is to the point where I don't know how it's going to happen, Hunter. Bears fans have to start manifesting. Somehow they're going to manifest a full ownership change. Because like I've said, you remember my quote, the day that the Bears are under new ownership will be the biggest jump or whatever, leap since the mankind took the first steps on the moon. Because at this point, we've literally gone through revisionist history. It's almost like it doesn't matter who's in the building because the people at the top of the building have no fucking clue what they're doing.
They have no clue. They have no clue. And until they get it right from the GM position to the head coaching position, we're not going to see any real success. Like what you made the point of, like Caleb Williams, like he has the choice not to sign that deal. And if he performs and looks good, he doesn't have to re-sign. Like there are plenty of franchises who will pay that money if he is that quarterback that everyone thinks he can be. So let me ask you this, Dobbs. I'm going to go through the next 4 games. You let me know if they have any chance of winning. Minnesota, who absolutely destroyed the Atlanta Falcons.
I'll say in divisional games, I'm always going to give you a small chance because they know each other very well. But again, 5%, 10%. I'll go 10. I'll be generous. Play it 10 times to win it once.
The Detroit Lions. No.
If the Lions are somehow, and that's the thing is, it's not even because the race is so close. I would say they would be in a position normally. Normally, we have this many teams at this late in the year that are still competing for the 1 seed by that time. But it's just a crazy year where they actually do stuff to play the starters. That would be their one hope, but it's just not. They're just not in that position.
The Seattle Seahawks on Thursday Night Football. That's their only chance.
I would say that. You know what? That one, there's a chance there. There is a chance there, but that we're still looking at like a 35%.
And finally, the Green Bay Packers at home, who may be resting their starters, who I'm not even convinced that they could beat resting their starters.
You know, that's the sad part, is that somehow they would trot Malik Willis out there and find a way to throw 10 screens that all go for 20 yards.
10 screens, and they would just run all over the Bears defense. Now, the bright side is if they do drop the next 4, you're almost guaranteeing like a top 7 pick maybe, which could be beneficial depending on who the GM is.
Franchise lineman. It may be out of their brain. They might not realize that that's an option. I don't know. I guess my thing is,
do you? And we'll just end it with this. Do you think that there's a lineman in this draft that is worth a top 8 pick?
It's tough. I mean, honestly, this year it is tough. Especially, I mean, look, especially with Banks, I feel I'm versatile where you might want him in, out, and now he's faced with the injury right now. I mean, it's tough. This is a year. I will say this. This is a year that from my perspective, I would much rather go with the D line before the O line
because you can use those second round picks on interior all line.
I'll just say that's kind of thing is that the Bears are fortunately, look, there's one bright side of it. It's that you're much more interior needy. And the interior, you actually can go second, third, fourth, right? Like that, you don't need to go early. But again, You also can do like what the Steelers did, where people were like, "Oh, Zach Frazier's not even first round," and you see what
He's been the
you see
best,
what Zach
like one
Frazier's
of the
been
better
doing.
centers in the league this
Like
year.
one of the best. So again, it's like sometimes also you don't overthink it. Again, we're in this weird period of time where now all of a sudden interior O line isn't the super important group. The Chiefs have 2 bad tackles and they have the best interior in the league, and they just won the Super Bowl. And they're probably going to win the Super Bowl again unless the Lions show up or show out. So, I mean, call me crazy, Hunter. The O-line is just, the interior is just as important as the exterior. I don't know. I don't know where people got this idea from.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to the post-game reaction to the Chicago Bears losing to the San Francisco 49ers. We'll be back on Wednesday. I don't know if we'll be live possibly, but we are going to have a regular video up. It's going to be kind of going over the best thing to look forward to, the draft prospects with someone we reached out to on Twitter. So we're excited for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe to the Bear Cave. We'll be live like 2-3 times a week and continue to bring you Chicago Bears centered content. The Bear Cave 1920 on all platforms. Have a great rest of your night.